Before the birth of the universe, there were two beings, not alive as such. They were incapable of consciousness, personality, intent, or will. They were forces, concepts more than beings. They were called Anu and Padme. Anu existed within all things, embodying the concepts of order, stasis, and light. Contrastingly, Padme personified chaos and change. Though opposite, their power was and still is equal. And though they fought one another, neither could ever be victorious. Anu eventually created Anu-El through birthing his own soul, a consciousness that could only exist as an everlasting, ineffable light. In Symphony, Padme birthed his own soul and created Sithis, a perfect, cloudless midnight, cold as winter ice and shrouded in shadow. The conflict and interplay between Sithis and Anu-El created Orbis, the universe itself in which the realms of Aetherius, Oblivion, and Mundus formed. In time, Anu-El and Sithis would, in turn, birth their own souls, creating Auriel, that is Akatosh, and Lorcan, respectively. These children would fight with one another, with Auriel establishing the concept of time in order to stabilize the universe, and Lorcan fighting to destroy it all, and return everything to the void. Sithis as a concept is the embodiment of misanthropy, a hatred of all peers and a total isolationist. He hates all others and cannot stand social interaction. As a result, he has become beloved by those who find themselves ostracized by society, the hated and the feared. This, along with his association with death and the void, has given rise to his popularity with vampires and death cults, most notably the Dark Brotherhood. The Dark Brotherhood itself was created when Sithis visited a village in Cyrodiil, where Breville would one day be founded. There he met a Dunmer woman, and their procreation led to the birth of 5 children. Returning to the void, Sithis told her to send the children to him, and so, when they were 2 years old, she sacrificed them, releasing their souls so that they could return to the void, and to their father. However, the inhabitants of the village believed she'd simply murdered her children, and so lynched the woman. 30 years later, a man heard voices much like she had heard Sithis, and went to her tomb. There he discovered her, the Night Mother, and became the first listener of the Dark Brotherhood, establishing the death cult as Sithis' first devotee. Among the races of Tamriel, Sithis is only venerated amongst the Argonians. Though Argonian religious belief centers around the Hist, they recognize and revere Sithis as the original creator, he who created the world and the universe itself. As a result, Argonians who are born under the sign of the Shadow are gifted to the Dark Brotherhood, and raised as assassins known as Shadow Scales, so that they may serve the Marsh and honor Sithis. The Argonians refer to him as Raj Sithis, not just the creator but also a destroyer, something capable of tearing things down, but thereby making them better, changing things and bringing new life. Within the Black Marsh, the Clutch of Nisfor acts as a pseudo-priesthood for Sithis. Within the church and the Clutch, they gather, spreading various stories, contradictory in and of themselves, creating the many truths of Sithis. They despise and disparage the Dark Brotherhood because they personify and name Sithis as himself, creating what they believe as one untruth. They hate the idea of there being a single definable legend of Sithis, as it goes against their beliefs of the many truths. As a result, they worship not Sithis in and of himself, but refer to him as Sithis the Changer. Sithis has demonstrated a level of intellect and sentience, even seeming to have a will of his own. During the Three Banners War, the Vestige is able to defy a group of Shadow Scales, and in doing so incur the wrath of Sithis. A large red serpent appeared, a minuscule piece of Sithis, a jolt of intellect and will contained within a shadowed form. The Vestige was left with no choice but to hand over the artifacts the assassins desired, being completely and totally unable to defy Sithis' power. This incident, along with the creation of the Brotherhood itself, has given rise to a popular belief that Sithis is sentient and cognizant as we understand it, not Aedra nor Daedra, but divine in and of himself. As a result, or in perhaps spite of this, several different societies across Tamriel all have different creation stories revolving around Sithis, interpreting his nature in divergent ways. In Khajiiti creation stories, Fadamai and Arnur were mates and gave birth to the litters of the Aedra and then the Daedra. Though Arnur was content with this, Fadamai secretly tricked Arnur into helping create one last litter, angering him. Interestingly, the roles of creator and aggressor are flipped in this particular story, with Arnur attacking Fadamai during the birth of Noni and the moons. Following his attack, Fadamai fled to the void to give birth to her final member of the litter, Loghaj, who creates Mundus for Nern to exist within, and tricks the rest of the gods to become trapped in it. Yokudans see Sithis and Anuiel as a single being known as Satakal, a giant serpent constantly eating its own tail in an endless cycle. To avoid being eaten by Satakal, spirits hopped from scale to scale in a way that became known as the Walkabout. The second serpent, Sep, claimed to have an idea for a way to avoid Satakal and the Walkabout by creating a new world. Once again, this creation traps the other spirits within and makes them mortal and unable to leave this world, which was too far separated from Satakal. In the Altmiri mythos, Sithis was created as the sum of all limits by Anuiel, the soul of Anu, as discussed previously, so that Anuiel could create borders and define himself. As Sithis isn't an active being in this story, Anuiel instead has the role of creating Lorcan, who is created when Anu creates the soul of his soul, Auriel, and time begins. Lorcan again tricks the gods into becoming trapped in the mortal world, full of limitations like himself, which was then known as the House of Sithis. Finally, and perhaps most believably, the Dunmer believed that the birth of Sithis was the start of creation, as the everlasting stasis of Anu meant nothing could ever change. Sithis broke the nothing and created ideas that ebbed and flowed out of it. Anuiel, the demon, came later and created the Aedra in order to counter him by building everlasting, imperfect worlds. To counter this, Sithis begat Lorcan, who created the mortal world and allowed things to once again decay by trapping the other gods within. The Dark Brotherhood, having split off from the Dunmeri Morag Tong, seem to share this belief, as this story can be found in many of their hideaways.